Hey guys, in this video, we're going to take a look at getting Azuracast or Azuracast. I've heard it pronounced both ways, but we're going to take a look at getting Azuracast set up. If you're not familiar with Azuracast or Azuracast, it is a free and open source self-hosted web radio station in a box. So basically you can set up your own playlists and stations and that sort of thing, and just let the music play, and you can toggle back and forth between different stations and just listen to whatever's on that station at any given moment, very much like listening to the radio. But before we start setting this up, I want to talk just a little bit about why I wanted to get Azuracast or Azuracast set up in the first place. These are the Oladance wearable stereo earbuds. I've had them for a couple of weeks now, and I use them very, very regularly, and I absolutely love them. Their marketing material and their website say that they get up to 16 hours per charge. Now, I actually haven't validated that because I rarely ever have to charge them. I charge them when they hit about 30 or 40%, and I just never think about it because it happens so infrequently for me. Now, these are on-ear, not in-ear earbuds, so they have an open sound stage to them. But more than that, they allow you to still hear what's going on around you while you're listening to music. Because of their shape and design, they're able to move the battery to the back that hangs below your ear, which adds a nice counterbalance, but also gives them the opportunity to put 16.5mm dynamic drivers in your ears. And after listening to music on these earbuds for the last few weeks, it finally occurred to me how much compression services like Spotify actually use to transmit their music. So what I want to do in this video is set up an instance of Azuracast and take you along for the ride to show you how easy it is to set up your own music station server. So with that said, let's jump over to my desktop and kind of get an idea of what we can expect with Azuracast. So if we take a look at their website here, we can see that it says that it is a free and open source self-hosted web radio station in a box, like we mentioned a moment ago. It says that everything's included. There's a lot to cover, but we're just going to touch on the information that you'll need to get this set up appropriately for local streaming. If we scroll down a little further, we can see that it runs anywhere on any server or desktop that supports Docker. It's a web-based station management system, multi-station administration, built-in public pages, and if you're ready to get started, you can install Azuracast today easily on Linode, DigitalOcean, Vultr, or like we're going to do, self-hosted. So I'm going to click on this self-hosted button there, and here is the Docker installation guide. Now, ultimately, it's just 5 commands to get the basic installation set up and ready to go, and because I've done installations like this in the past, there's this command here that's a curl file, to curl a file to your server and then deploy it. And a lot of people are immediately, I can see you in the comments, I'm not going to do that. I'm not just going to deploy a file that I've downloaded from someplace on the internet. And I want to say good. I commend your attention to detail and security there. You should absolutely, once you've downloaded this file, you should open it up and take a look at it before you deploy it if you don't trust the developer. Azuracast or Azuracast has been around for a while, and I'm pretty confident in their ability to do the right thing. However, some of you out there won't be comfortable with that, so I encourage you to open your favorite text editor in the terminal and take a look at that file before you deploy anything. But before we get into running these commands, what I want to show next is actually the system requirements here. And if we take a look right there, there's a link for the system requirements. So basically, the minimum requirements would be a 64-bit x86 platform or even an ARM64 CPU, at least 2 gigs of RAM, 20 gigs of hard drive space, and a computer/server capable of running Docker. You can absolutely deploy using those specs. However, if you've got a large music collection, it's going to be painfully slow for it to go through and process all of the music in your collection. So I would probably go with at least the minimum, or the recommended requirements here of 4 CPU cores, 4 gigs of RAM, 40 gigs of hard drive space, and again, that server or computer capable of running Docker. So that minimum requirement is what I'm going to use when I deploy my proxmox container. That, if we scroll down a little bit further, has Ubuntu 22.04 set up and configured on it already with Docker. But here are all of the different operating systems that this is compatible with regards to Docker or Ansible and Docker, whatever the case is. You've got a list of options here for deploying Azuracast using the install script. So really all you need to get started here is this operating system on either bare metal hardware or a container/VM, whatever. running the install script that I will show here in a minute will also automatically install Docker for you. It will automatically install Docker Compose. If neither of those are installed, it will install them. And it will ask you if you'd like to install them. Of course, if you say no, the installation can't proceed, but you just click yes, and it goes through the rest of the setup process pretty painlessly. So with the prerequisites out of the way, I'm going to jump back over to my proxmox dashboard here. And I've got this 999 template. You can actually see I've done a couple of different things with Azuracast over the last few days, getting my mind wrapped around a few different concepts. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to clone this. I'm going to call it Azure Video. And I'm going to select where my storage is here. And then I'm going to click clone. So this is going to do its thing. This is basically the same as me just installing Ubuntu, like you'll have to do if you want to get this set up. And I actually encourage you to set up whether you're doing proxmox and a container or a VM, or you're setting up a bare metal or whatever, I absolutely encourage you to isolate this and make it its own separate thing, because Azuracast has a lot of ports that it needs to run properly. And if you've got other containers on a Docker instance or whatever, there's a very high likelihood that this will try to interfere with that and it won't deploy properly. So, and I will actually show you when we go through this installation process what all those ports look like. Just know that it's a bunch of ports that will almost guaranteed conflict with something else on your system. So that's why I recommend setting this up again in its own VM container, dedicated bare metal, whatever the case is. But we'll get to that here in just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and actually go over to my new Azure Video that we just spun up there. I'm going to go to Resources, and I want to change this for the memory and the swap to 4096. Again, that is the recommended RAM that they want you to use for this setup. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. For my cores, again, I'm going to set that to 4. And for my disk storage here, I'm going to go ahead, oops, I don't want to do it that way. What I want to do is resize that storage, and I'm just going to add 48 gigs to that to give us a total of 64 gigs available. I know a lot of this may not pertain to you, but I just kind of wanted to show what my resources will be for this configuration. So the image is resized. We can go ahead and close that. And then we can come over and actually start our container. Again, if you're doing this in proxmox, otherwise this doesn't apply to you again. So I'm going to click on console, and hopefully here in just a second, this will spin up. And we'll go ahead and get logged in as root or whatever user you have set up. First thing I want to do is actually get my IP address, just so I've got it for later. It is right here for me, 192.168.0.198. That's what I'm going to use when we actually get into the dashboard section of things here. So the first thing we're going to do is create this var/Azuracast or Azuracast. I apologize. We're going to create this directory. That's the one it wants to use for the installation. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then we're actually going to just change into that directory like so. So now we are in var/Azuracast. The next thing we need to do is actually use the curl command to download the Docker installation script. So we're going to go ahead and paste that in. And here again, we're just curling via SSL that URL, and we're going to hit enter. Now, here is where you could say, maybe I've got nano installed. And here is what that command looks like, and it's going to create some files, and it's going to go through all of this. We're not going to go through this, but just know that you absolutely can go through this if you want to take a look at what the install script is going to do. Once we're happy with that file, what we're going to do is actually come over here. We're going to chmod the file to be executable with the chmod a+x and then that docker.sh there. So now that file is executable. So we're going to do /docker.sh install like so and hit enter. Now it's saying, hey, all of this stuff passed your operating system, your architecture, your command presets, your user permissions, your installation directory. All the requirements have been met, so now we can move on. It says Docker is already installed. Great. It's going to go ahead and continue. And it says, hey, Docker Compose is not or does not appear to be installed. Do you want to do that? I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to go ahead and do that for us next. And here it's saying your current release channel is rolling release. Do you want to switch to the stable release? That's completely up to you. You can switch to stable if you'd like. You can leave it at rolling if you like. I'm going to leave it at the rolling release for this. So I'm just going to hit enter to say no. If you wanted to change to the stable release and say yes, it would download all of those files and do the quick little setup it needs to do. And then you would need to start the installation, that /docker.sh install. You need to run that again to move on with the stable release, but we're not going to do that here. So now it's going to pull the installer setup. This will take a couple of minutes, depending on, again, the resources available to your setup here, as well as your internet connection itself. Okay, so here we are just a couple of minutes later, and next it wants us to select a language. I'm going to use English because that's what I speak, so I'm just going to hit enter. Of course, you can change that to whatever you need it to be for your configuration. And here are all of those ports I was talking about earlier. There's a bunch of them, and we don't want to customize any of this. It would be kind of a fiasco in my opinion. So we're just going to not customize the ports here. I'm just going to click enter for no. Do we want to enable custom code plugins? I don't need that, so I'm going to say no. Do we want to enable web-based Docker image updates? Absolutely. If it's going to check for updates and let us know that there's an update and let us do that update in the browser versus doing it in the terminal, I'm all for that in this case. So I'm going to say yes by pressing enter. So now it's written the configuration files. So now based on those configurations, it's going to start pulling everything that it needs to continue with the installation. Okay, so again, just a couple of minutes later, and we're up and running. It says visit your home's IP address. I don't know why, but it does. We're not going to do that. We're actually going to go to the local IP address of this container, but everything should be up and running. So what we're going to do. Okay, so you're probably going to see an error that looks very similar to this depending on the browser you're using. And it's saying, hey, your connection's not private. We are on an HTTPS URL or IP address there. And that's because Azuracast has a self-signed certificate built into it. Just go ahead and click advanced and click on proceed. It's fine. Now we're going to be asked to create our administrator account. So I'm going to put in an email address and a password here, and then I'll click create. So here is the next screen, and it's asking us to create an account or create a station. I'm going to kind of skip this for right now, just because I want to make sure that I get my storage set up first. So what I want to do is come up to the top right and click on System Administration. And then I want to come over here to under System Maintenance. I want to scroll down to where it says Storage Locations. And I want to add a storage location. Now again, this is under Station Media. We've also got Station Recordings, Station Podcasts, and Backups. Adding storage to each of those is the same. So I'm only going to go through adding the storage location for Station Media. I'm going to click right here. You could use a local file system if you wanted to, but all of my music is stored right there on that Synology device. So I've got an FTP user already set up, so that's what I'm going to use here. I know that my path or suffix, the location of my music for my FTP user is /music. My storage quota, you can kind of make this whatever you'd like it to be. I'm just going to say 2 terabytes. You can make it whatever. My FTP or SFTP host will be the IP address of that Synology device over there. And the SFTP port 22, that's fine. And then my username and password for that. I'm going to scroll down and click save. And right here we can see that we've got our storage location set up for remote SFTP. Again, you've got storage or station recordings, station podcasts, and backups that you can use or set up storage for each of those different things the same way we just did the station media. So the next thing I want to do, now that we have our storage configured, I want to come back up to the top right and go to System Administration. And there's a lot in here, like system settings, where you can set a base URL. This is super handy if you're trying to set this up for remote access via reverse proxy or Cloudflare tunnels or whatever the case is. I would be leery about using something like Cloudflare tunnels because they do have I think it's section 2.8 of their terms of service, saying that you won't use their tunnels to display or to transmit anything other than static like HTML and CSS and JavaScript and that sort of thing. Transmitting media may get your account banned. So be careful with that. Once you've got this set up, once you've got your base URL set up again, whether you're using a reverse proxy or a tunnel or whatever, you'll put that URL in right there, and you'll want to make sure that you enable web or use web proxy for radio. It just kind of simplifies the remote access configuration. So if you're going to fill in URL here, make sure that you check that as well. And then you can use WebSockets if you need to do that for your configuration. Security and privacy. For privacy, when you're, what kind of analytics do you want to gather about your listeners? Full, limited, or none? That's up to you. Do you want to always use HTTPS? Again, that's up to you. And your services, it shows what release channel you're on. Do you want to show updated announcements? Let's Encrypt, do you want to generate your own Let's Encrypt or SSLs here by putting in your domain name and your email address? If you want to enable SMTP relays or services rather, you can enable the mail delivery system there and put in all of your SMTP information. You've got an avatar service, you've got album art. So if you've got a Last.fm API key, you can have it pull album art for you if you want to do that. And that's kind of it in the system settings. Once you're happy with all of that, you can click Save Changes. Coming back up to system maintenance, you can also go to like custom branding, and you can choose a wallpaper for your site, default album art, default browser icon. You can adjust all of these to make it more your own. I'm going to select the dark option there for the public pages. You can decide you want to hide album art and Azuracast branding on public pages. The homepage redirect URL, you can adjust that as necessary. Once you're happy, again, click Save. Come back up to system maintenance. You got system logs, storage locations we've already looked at. Backups, I would encourage you to set up a storage location for your backups and then configure backups by just simply going there and configuring automatic backups, or you can run a manual backup. You've got some options on how you want to do that. System debugger, of course, you can kind of get an idea of what these things do, but they're very human readable, and I appreciate that. And you can even see the cron job timing on each of those different things. Or you can see when they were last run, when they're next run, or you can manually run that task if you need to for whatever reason. Next, we've got our update Azuracast, and you can, your installation needs to be updated. Updating is recommended, so let's check for updates. Your installation is up to date, so because it hadn't checked, it just defaulted to, hey, be sure to check. There's nothing to do there, so we're good to go. You could then, if there was an update, click on Update via Web. I would run a backup first, though. Next, we've got the users section here where we've got user accounts, just the one user, myself, in there for right now. You can add additional users if you'd like to do that by simply clicking Add User and filling in their information and checking whether or not they should be a super administrator. That's only because the super administrator is the only thing showing there, because we actually haven't gone over here and set up any additional roles and permissions. You can by clicking Add Role. Globally, you can set these permissions for whatever group you want to, or role you want to create here. And then there are station-specific permissions that you can set up for different users if you wanted to do that. There are no station permissions available here because we haven't created a station yet. However, as you create stations, this will populate with those stations, and you can create roles that give special privileges to individual stations if you wanted to go that route. Next, we've got an audit log. So if somebody says, hey, I'm having this issue, and you're like, hey, what did you do? And they're like, well, I didn't do anything. You can come in here and validate that to make sure they actually did or didn't do something. Users, next, we got API keys. If you needed to set up an API key for whatever you would need an API key for, integrations and that sort of thing, you can do that from this page. And then stations, we don't have any stations yet, so let's come over here and create one. Here is the button to click on Add a Station, so we're going to do that. So here, I'm just going to call this this station 10 years. I'm going to make this a banned station. You don't have to make it a banned station. You can kind of create your stations based on any number of files you have on your server, but I'm just going to do it by banned just to do a demonstrative thing here. So we're going to call this Take Yours Also. and then their album would be like rock, and you can put in their website URL if you wanted to do that. I'm going to put in my time zone, which is Denver. You can customize the URL stub, kind of the, like your IP address /10 years, or you can kind of configure that. If you don't, it will automatically do it for you. You can see how many songs are coming up. You can enable public pages, which I recommend, enable on-demand streaming. That is letting them see all of the tracks that are available and playing them individually. I've had really bad luck with that. I spent quite a bit of time yesterday trying to get that to work. Didn't have any luck, did a bunch of research. A lot of other people are having a similar issue. So that may be something for a later date as far as configuring that. We scroll back up, we've got the broadcasting tab where you can choose to use Icecast on this server or use Icecast on a different server. Lots of configuration stuff in here that we can do, but for the sake of a local installation for demonstrative purposes, none of this really matters for us. We can set up Auto DJ to use Liquid Soap, which I encourage. Crossfade method is, I like to set this to smart because a lot of the bands that I like do something I really hate, and that's where they'll add, 45 seconds of silence at the end of the track for some artistic reason. So I like to use the smart crossfade option here to help alleviate some of that. The audio processing method, this is actually why I wanted to make this video now that I've got these earbuds. After listening to paid services that are out there, I'm not going to name any names, but there's a bunch of them out there. A lot of them, except for maybe Tidal, use a lot of compression to send the music to wherever you're listening to it. And I get why they do it, so that they're saving bandwidth, but there's a lot of compression in that music. And setting this to Liquid Soap will give a fuller sound, like it says here. So I encourage that. Just know that it will be more resource intensive on your setup. Below that, we've got manual DJ modes and use replay gain metadata. I've never dealt with any of this, so you can play with this as you need to, but for my configuration, for my setup, it doesn't make any sense. So next we've got HLS. Do you want to use HTTP live streaming with adaptive bitrate? I don't. I want a constant bitrate whenever possible. If you were going to have a lot of people on here and you wanted to use a bit of compression, you could absolutely do that. Song requests, you can allow song requests by checking the box and kind of following along there. However, it's important to note that people can only request music that's already on your server. They can't request something that isn't there via this solution. So there's that. Basically, do you want to allow streamers and DJs, do you want people to be able to come in and manually DJ for you or for the station or whatever? I don't want to do that, but you absolutely could. And then for administration, we want to enable broadcasting. Again, you can leave this empty and it will fill in the base station directory automatically for you. What we really want to take a look at here is the media storage location. We want to select our SFTP location here because that's where my music is located, is on that server over there, and I've connected to it via SFTP. So I'm going to click Save, and here is our new station that we've created. So I'm going to click Manage. It opened in a new tab, and I really hate that. I don't mean to be negative in this video, but I really dislike it when these services arbitrarily open stuff in a new tab. Maybe I'm missing what isn't arbitrary about it, but to me it seems very arbitrary. So what we want to do though is come over here and go to our media page. There's obviously the start station. If we do that, great, but there's no music to play yet, so there's really no point in starting the station until we start adding media to our setup here. So we're going to come down here to music files, and there is all of the music that we currently have available. And right here is that 10 years folder that I was talking about, and here it's got the name, and it's got the name of the song, and it's got the full name of the MP3 file. Now the reason I bring that up is if you see the name under here like this, it can be added to a playlist. However, if we go back, give this a second, I'm going to scroll way down to Megadeth. Right, we're going to click there, and here it says file processing. And I want to bring this up specifically because if you see where it says file processing there, and you click this and you try to add it to a playlist and click Save, and then come over here to your playlist, it didn't add it. And that's because the system doesn't recognize what it is yet. So for the sake of security and safety and whatnot, it will not add a file that has not been processed. So That's why I advise you to over provision your setup here to help speed up the process of going through all of the files and processing them to make sure that they are what they say they are, and recognizing them as music files. So let's come back over to our media page, our music files. Let's go to 10 years. I'm going to just hit the check all box up here and come down to the bottom and uncheck the album NFO file. And then I'm going to select my playlist option and click on default and click save. And this time it said, hey, I added all of that. Now let's go back to our playlist and validate. Now we have 13 songs that are going to play for about 53 minutes. The other thing that I like to do when I'm building out a station, just so that it's easier for me to recognize from a distance if I'm across the room or whatever, is I like to come over here to profile and go to branding. And here you can select the wallpaper for that station page as well as the icon for that station page. So I'm going to select that, go to my desktop, wallpaper, desktop logo, like so, and I'll click save. And there we go. So now that we've got all this configured, we can click on start, go ahead and click on start, and we'll give this a couple of minutes to do its thing. Okay, so we've given this a couple of minutes to start up. So what we're going to do next is come back up and click on right there where it says 10 years. Here we can see kind of what's going on here, the song that's playing, the next song that's going to play. What we can do next is actually come over here and click on the public page. And here it is. It's this drug of choice from 10 years is playing. And I'll click the play button, just like that. So we know that it is working the way we want it to. So I'm going to go ahead and click back. And, we can, like I said, skip the song if we wanted to do that. We can enable or disable song requests. We can enable or disable streamers and DJs. Same thing with the broadcasting service. Auto DJ service is up and running. If you had a third-party solution, whether it's an app on your phone or VLC or whatever your media player of choice is, you can put in this URL into that to stream to that application, so you're not kind of tied into the web interface if you don't want to be. Of course, if you were to put this on a URL, it would show that domain name there instead of the IP address that we're using. So that's something to keep in mind. We're not going to get into setting up a URL for this, just because there's so many different ways to do it and so many people do things very, very differently. And then of course, below that, we've got our public page, our podcast, and our schedule. You've got embed widgets, you can edit branding, or you can disable public pages from here. So with this particular station, we used a remote SFTP connection to store or to have access to our files rather. So let me show you how you can do local storage with Azuracast. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over to here. I lied, we'll click administration. We'll go to stations over here, and we're going to add a station. I'll just call it NIN, and I'll set my time zone like so. Really all I care about here, auto DJ, crossfade mode, liquid soap, administration, enable broadcasting. We're going to go ahead and just create a new storage location based on the base directory and click save. And so then we can click on manage, and it's going to open in a new window for some reason that I don't understand. So then we're going to come over here to media and click on music files. And then we're going to just select the files that we want. And we're just going to use 9 Inch Nails Head Like a Hole, the US version from 1990, and we're going to click open. And now it's just going to go through and upload all of these tracks for us. While it's doing that, it's also processing them, so you don't have to worry about waiting like we did earlier. And then we'll give this a second to do its thing, and there we go. Now we've got all of our songs from that album anyway there, and I'm going to say playlist, default, save. And of course, if we wanted to, we could come over to profile and brand it if we wanted to, edit the profile, that sort of thing. All of that's available. We already did it once, so I don't think we need to do it again. But now we can come over to the public page. Oh, I lied. We need to start the station like so. Station reloaded. We'll come over here. It says station's offline. And it'll take it a couple of minutes to pop up and start playing music. But this is kind of what the default looks like without the custom branding. There we go. Just probably 60 seconds later. And there we go. Now we've got our music playing. I don't want to play too much of that for obvious copyright reasons, but now we've taken a look at local storage and SFTP storage to create your station. So you've got a couple of options on how you can handle that. One other quick thing I want to show you before we get out of here, and that is, if we click on the Azuracast thing up here, we can see who you are, you're logged in as. You can go to my account, you can administer this. Only administrative users will have this button here. Everyone else will just have a My Account button. And again, with the installation not recently backed up, that'll again only be for people who have the permission to run backups and manage backups and that sort of thing. We can see listeners per station. We can see the stations that we have available to us. And of course, if you had a bunch of stations and had certain stations configured to certain groups and people in those groups, the people would only be able to see the stations assigned to them based on that group. Hopefully that makes sense. But of course, then down here, you can play from right here. So you can play your music from right here if you want to, or you can jump back over to the public page and do things from there. So that's kind of the quick and dirty way to get Azuracast set up. I've been using Spotify for years and it's been great. Prior to that, it was Pandora and it was fine. But then I got these Oladance earbuds, and this is going to sound gimmicky or part of the marketing or whatever, and I can assure you it is not. I was able to finally hear the compression that was being used by those solutions. Once I came over here and played the same song using the liquid soap processing method, it really is a truly fuller sound than what you're going to get from a lot of the paid subscription services out there. Maybe with the exception of Tidal. I've never actually used it, but I've heard really good things about it. But this way I can use my music on my server, handled the way I want to handle it. And I can use these. I use these literally all day long. I often forget that I'm wearing them because they just kind of, they don't weigh anything. They don't block my hearing. Once they're here, I don't notice that they're there after a while. In fact, I have to see myself in a reflection or in a camera or whatever, sometimes to even remember that they're there, just because they kind of fade away into nothingness with the open ear design and the on-ear design. Wonderful, wonderful earbuds. If you're interested in picking some up, there will be a link in the description so you can do exactly that. There will also be a link to more information about Azuracast and getting that set up if you want to take a look at that. But I think with that said, I've talked quite a bit here. I want to thank you guys for making it this far in the video. If you did, do me a favor, give the video a thumbs up. That really would help me out quite a bit. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you for spending a few minutes of your day with me today, and I'll talk to you in the next video.